If you look at wild animals, you will notice something very interesting. They're never fat and they have very little of the human-like diseases that we have. However, when we domesticate these animals and feed them a diet that is not their species-appropriate diet, what happens is they start to get all of our human-like diseases, including high rates of cancer, diabetes, and even heart disease. The average lifespan of a golden retriever used to be about 16 years. However, now it's only down to 10. And the reason for this is due to one factor, which I'm going to be discussing today. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down why it is so important that a species eats its species-appropriate diet. First up on the agenda today, I'm going to be breaking down what is a species-appropriate diet, and then following with why is a species-appropriate diet important. And then I'm going to look at examples of adaptations that species have when they eat their species-appropriate diet, as well as what happens to a species when it's not eating this appropriate diet. Then finally, I'm going to be looking at how this concept applies to humans by breaking down what are humans meant to eat, followed by have humans adapted to be able to break down the defense chemicals in plants, and then how plants are detrimenting human health. What is a species-appropriate diet? A species-appropriate diet is what a species is designed to eat and what a species has always eaten. Now, for every wild animal, this can be put down to plain intuition. Lions aren't taught that they're meant to hunt other animals, they just intuitively do it. Cows aren't told they're meant to eat grass, they just intuitively do it. Sure, you could argue their parents have taught them this. However, even if you get a lion and take it away from its family, it will still hunt other animals. Dogs are the same. Another factor that influences what a species eats is the amount of access to food it has. For example, take chimpanzees. For a long time, chimpanzees were regarded as a herbivore species. However, in more recent years, they've been observed hunting other animals if given the chance. But why is a species-appropriate diet so important? Well, when a species eats a certain plant for an extended period of time, they begin to develop adaptations to break down the toxins in that plant. And for those of you who are unaware, every single plant contains at least some toxins, including vegetables, by the way. Every single vegetable that humans commonly eat contains over 60 identified carcinogens. Now, for some people watching this video who have never heard of this concept, that's going to be hard to believe. However, this is completely true. Every single living organism has two main goals: to survive and reproduce. Now, animals can defend themselves through methods like kicking, biting, running, those sorts of things. However, plants are obviously stationary, so over time they develop something known as defense chemicals to deter insects, birds, or just predators in general from eating them. And this right here is why vegetables have such a bitter taste to us. It's our taste buds identifying that these things have toxins and that we shouldn't eat them. Let's take a look at some of these adaptations that certain animals have. First, we're going to look at gorillas. Now, gorillas are what is known as hind gut digesters, which means they're able to use their large cecum and colon to ferment plants, turning the fiber that they contain into short-chain fatty acids. For humans, when we eat fiber, it counts as 0 calories because for the most part we can't break it down. However, if a gorilla eats a gram of fiber, it counts as 2 calories because, like I just said, they can turn it into these short-chain fatty acids. Now, because of this and other factors, such as the fact that they have massive intestines, gorillas are able to eat certain plants without it having an effect on them, because during this fermenting process, many of the toxins in the plants that gorillas are eating are broken down. Another species that has had an adaptation because they've eaten a plant for an extended period of time is ruminant animals. Examples of ruminant animals include sheep and cows, and basically what a ruminant animal means is that they have 4 stomachs. And because they have this complex digestive system with their multi-chambered stomachs, they're able to break down the compounds in these plants that would harm other species. So if a species eats something that's not its species-appropriate diet, they can't break down these toxins in plants, and it's going to have significant effects on them. An example of a species that eats something that it hasn't yet adapted to is pandas. The earliest pandas were carnivores. However, due to the fact that they could not get enough food from other animals, largely due to the fact that they're not the greatest hunters, pandas switched from a carnivorous diet to a diet of bamboo. Now, while pandas do have some very minor adaptations like a specialized gut microbiome, they have not yet fully adapted to eating this bamboo. They aren't hind gut digesters like gorillas, and they don't have the multi-chambered stomachs like cows. In fact, pandas still have a digestive system that's rather similar to other carnivorous species. And now I'm going to read to you some of the issues that are reported in pandas. Gastrointestinal issues, respiratory illnesses, low reproductive rate, immune issues as they age, and low energy. Now, this sounds rather familiar, doesn't it? Humans who are also eating a diet that is not their species-appropriate diet seem to suffer from very similar issues. So, what is the species-appropriate diet for humans? Well, it's very simple. Humans are designed to be carnivores. Now, have we consumed plants from time to time as survival foods? Absolutely. However, humans are designed to only eat meat. I have an entire video on this topic where I break down 31 reasons as to why this is the case. However, I'll break down a few of the most compelling reasons with you now. The first being the Ice Age. From about 2.5 million years ago to 12,000 years ago, humans lived in the Ice Age, which meant a large portion of Earth was covered in ice. And because the entire Earth was covered in ice, it meant all the plants were also. So humans had very little access to eating plants. Now, this is further supported by the fossils we find, as because in fossils there is something known as nitrogen 15 ratings. And how this works is the more carnivorous a species is, the higher their nitrogen 15 rating is. And humans had the highest nitrogen 15 ratings on the planet, higher than every other species, including all the carnivorous species like wolves. What's also interesting to note is the fossils that we find that are 12,000 years or older are in much better health than the ones we've found since then, since we started agriculture. As soon as this ice melted, humans started agriculture, and ever since then, based on our fossil records, our health has not been the same, which is another indication that we're not designed to eat plants. Now, these are only a few of the reasons that we know that we're meant to be carnivores. And like I said, I went into this in great depth in another video, which I'll link to at the end of this one. Now, in the last 12,000 years, as I mentioned, humans have started agriculture. So is that enough time for us to become adapted to plants? Now, for species to develop minor adaptations, it takes roughly 10,000 years. Now, this number is very different species to species due to something known as a life cycle. Now, humans have a life cycle of about 20 to 30 years, which means that on average it takes about 20 to 30 years for a new generation to start. Now, obviously, the shorter the life cycle of a species, the more new life they have, and the more new chances they have to develop these adaptations. And so for humans, it might even take us longer than this 10,000 year time frame due to the fact that we have a relatively high life cycle. So how do we know this time frame is accurate? Well, when we look at human fossils from about 10,000 years ago, they have very little of what is known as the LCT gene, otherwise known as the lactose gene, which basically means that 10,000 years ago, everyone was lactose intolerant. However, since then, due to the fact that we started farming at the same time we started agriculture, humans have been drinking, likely, a lot of milk. And so over time, we've developed this gene, and now most people can drink lactose without any issues. And to further support this, when we look at human tribes that still live out in the wild who haven't started farming, and therefore their people have never consumed lactose, they have very small amounts of this gene. For a species to become fully adapted to break down a plant, it takes over 1 million years, and humans have only been mass consuming plants for the last 12,000 years. So we're not fully adapted. This is why we see in humans that we don't have any adaptations to break down plants, and it's why all plants by themselves taste bad. That bitter taste is signaling to us that we can't break this down, it's going to cause harm to us. So what detriment is consuming plants having to humans? Well, we can clearly see this demonstrated throughout society. 50% of people nowadays get cancer. 10.5% of people have diabetes. And the amount of anxiety and depression is just off the charts. Cancer is cells growing abnormally due to inflammation. And when we eat these plants that are toxic to us and we don't have the adaptations to break it down, have a guess what happens? It's going to cause inflammation. And the same with diabetes. Diabetes is caused because humans are not used to consuming mass amounts of carbohydrates. All carbohydrates come from plants, with the exception of a small amount that comes from the dairy and milk. And then anxiety and depression. A large factor is an imbalance in hormones due to inflammation. 90% of the serotonin that humans make is made in the gut. So when you're eating foods that you're not designed to eat and your gut's all inflamed, people tend to get depressed. Don't believe me? In a study of over 2,000 people on the carnivore diet, 96% of the people surveyed said that their psychiatric symptoms improved. Humans, like all species, if they eat what they're designed to eat, do not get sick and they do not get fat. Anyways, that concludes today's video. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more of my content, consider subscribing down below. It's completely free and means you'll see more videos like this. Throughout this video, I've talked about many concepts, including what humans are meant to eat. So here is my video where I break down all the reasons as to why we know that humans are carnivores. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.